When I started selling on Amazon, it didn't take me long to realize how much work it was going to be. Here's a picture of part of my very first shipment into Amazon. Each one of those items had labels that I would have to take off, then I would have to create a listing for them, change the price, relabel them with an Amazon label, and then ship them off. But I also had to make sure that I gave Amazon a list of everything that was in each box that I sent. Otherwise, they would have gotten mad at me. Now, I could have done that with the Amazon Seller app or the desktop version of Seller Central, but it would have taken a very long time. So instead, I decided I would try out a free trial for a system that would help me find inventory faster, list it, create shipments, and then track my progress in my Amazon business. And since that first shipment, I've never looked back, and I've been investing $49 a month for InventoryLab and Scoutify 2, their scouting app, ever since. This video is not sponsored by InventoryLab, though I do have an affiliate link with them, just in case you want to sign up, but I honestly don't really care if you want to use them or not. Just do what's best for your business. We have to process all of this inventory for Amazon and all of this for eBay, but we're just going to be doing the Amazon stuff in this video, and I'll be going over everything you need to know about Scoutify 2 and InventoryLab while we process the shipment, just like Michael requested. And if you watched my last reselling vlog, you know that I'm going to owe someone coffee by the end of this video because we're going to go over the totals from Amazon and eBay in terms of potential profit. InventoryLab can really be broken down into two different pieces of software. First is the app, which I use to source inventory and create buy lists, which we're going to do in a second. And the second is the desktop version, and this is what you're going to use to list products, send shipments into Amazon, and then track your progress. Now, you're pretty much going to move through these apps in the process of sending a shipment into Amazon, starting with Scoutify 2, because that's what you're going to use to source inventory. So let me break down everything that you can do on this app and some stuff that I just found out about this week. But I need to go grab some boxes at Home Depot, and there's a Burlington right next door. So let's pop in there and see what we can find. So before you actually even get into the app, you're gonna have to create a subscription for InventoryLab. It's gonna look like this, and you're just gonna have to log in. So now that we're in here, there are gonna be a couple of things that you wanna set up first on this tab. First, at the very top, you're gonna have your suppliers list. Now you can add suppliers as you're creating your buy list. That's more important for later when you're reporting so that you know which stores are your most profitable. Next, you have a couple check boxes. You can either increase the font size when you're sourcing. If you have bad eyes, you can match buy box for list price, which is what I do. That way, whenever you scan an item, just like this little Elsa item, as you can see, it'll already give me a net profit reading. It's just gonna match my price to the buy box price of $23 and change. We'll come back to the screen in a second. And then you have options for how long to keep your history for 30 or 90 days. This tab over here that has the clock on it is actually your history tab. So if you click on that, it'll pull up everything that you've checked for the past 30 days or 90 days if you change that. Those are your initial settings, and you'll be able to source even without putting in your Seller Central information. But if you do that, it's going to ask you to log into Seller Central in the settings, and you want to do that especially because it's going to be able to give you some specific information to your account. I always have it checked for restrictions because that's one of the reasons I won't have to go back to the Amazon Seller app, and one of the reasons I like this app so much. And for enhancements, you can click how you want to source and what you want to create your business model around. Like I've talked about a lot, my desired return on investment is 100%. On rank thresholds, this is actually something pretty interesting. I didn't realize I'd posted up right next to the security room, so there was just people coming in and out the whole time. Hopefully this will be better. This is really cool because a lot of people have been asking about sales rank and what's a good sales rank. That'll change category to category. And in here, you can change the rank threshold. Say you sell arts and crafts and you don't want to sell anything over 100,000 rank. If you change this threshold to, instead of the top 5, the top 2%, then you'll change that to only everything 113,000 and below. And you can change that for all of the items. It just defaults all of them to 5%. That's because I have this ideal buy on. And if you see that little thumbs up in the corner, that's what will come up if I scan an item that is an ideal buy. So we'll scan this yoga mat. As you can see, it has that little green check mark up in the corner because based on all the enhancements that I put into Scoutify 2, it thinks that this is a great buy. And you can tweak it so that if you don't want to be competing with Amazon, you can click Amazon is not the merchant, as well as has a great rank. After that is where you have custom ASIN shortcuts. I'm pretty sure this is where you can plug in your Keepa subscription if you have one. I don't, and I talked about that in my last reselling vlog. But this is where you can add other research tools to the app, which will show up if you go over to the first page in this research section. If that's wrong and someone who uses Keepa or another plugin to Scoutify 2 knows the difference, let me know in the comments, and that'll help some other people out as well. After that is one of the most important parts, because this is going to help you estimate whether or not something is a profitable buy. Not only if it will sell, but if it will sell at a price that's good for you to buy it. You have a shipping rate, default sales tax, and default discount. If you don't use a seller certificate, you're going to be paying sales tax like me, and I have mine at 6.5%, which is the general tax rate around where I live for sales tax. Your shipping rate is what you would estimate to pay per pound to ship stuff into Amazon. I estimate all this stuff a little bit high, except for the sales tax, but it just gives me some margin with my profitability range. Default discount is 0%. I've only ever had to use this when I've had a store-wide discount at like an academy where they have clearance prices plus an additional 50 or 75% off. So I'll just plug that in there when I'm creating my buy list, which is something that we'll get to soon. And then for Amazon fees, I estimate a 3-month storage time frame. I normally try to buy things that will sell within 1 to 2 months, so that is normally an overestimation. And then there's some stuff for help as well. For moving from right to left, we're actually going to skip this because this is the buy list part, which we're going to get to when we get back to my apartment. This, like we talked about, was the history, but these two, this barcode looking thing and this magnifying glass, are how we're gonna search for inventory. So let's scan a couple things real quick and talk through the inventory pages. So if we click this button down here in the middle, it's actually gonna pull up our scanner. So when we look at the inventory page, it's gonna give us a lot of information. Here at the very top, it's gonna tell us what the item name is. Sometimes it'll cut this off or abbreviate it if the name is too long for this little space here. Next, we'll have the ASIN, the target cost per unit. That goes back to our enhancements where we said that we wanted 100% return on investment and we estimated our shipping rate and storage time. So it knows that even though we would be getting back $13.04, we should think that we'd be able to spend $6.57 to make a 100% ROI. It knows that with taxes, you could spend a maximum of $6.12 in order to be able to do that. Next, it's going to show you the sales rank, and because it doesn't seem like this has sold anything, the rank is unavailable, but it also shows you the category is toys and games. Because the rank's unavailable on this one, I'm obviously not going to be buying it, as well as I'm restricted, which is something that I'll show you on a different thing. So let's scan a different item. These are some tennis balls, but this also shows us something else that's interesting. After we've scanned this, we see that there's a bunch of different listings that show up, especially with something like this, where you can put 3 or 4 of them in a pack. Make sure that you pick the correct one if you want to buy something like this, because there might be some that say 3-pack, but if we click this one right here, normally the best one is going to be the one that has that ideal buy signal on, and as you can see, it's the correct item, the Chuck It Tennis Ball 2-pack, and then this sales rank in pet supplies is 20,000, so that means it's below that 5% of the best sales rank, and so now we can continue to look at it because we know that it has a good rank and it's the correct item. So after that, we see the dimensions that are in Amazon for pounds, as well as the other dimensions, and then it's going to show you how many you have on hand of your own inventory, which is why it's important for you to sign into Seller Central, because if this is something that maybe I had bought before and I'm replenishing, I would be able to see how many I already have on hand to make sure that I'm not sending in too much inventory. After that, you're gonna have the channel, which is FBA, the cost per unit, which right now says $0 because we haven't put anything in yet, the list price, and then the net profit, which since we haven't put in a cost yet, is what you would be getting back from Amazon after they take all of their fees. If we click anywhere on here, it's gonna pull up this whole page, and we could change FBA to FBM, where we would ship it ourselves. $2.99 here is what we're gonna put in, and because we've already put in our default sales tax, it's gonna calculate that for us. So if we put in $2.99, as we can see now, it's a negative 15% return on investment, net profit of negative 48 cents. So we're still not making money. Let's scan something else. Got a Nike backpack, $45, selling it here for 17. And when we pull it up, we can see that it's the correct item. 41,000 out of 161 million in clothing, shoes, and jewelry. The type of item that it is, small, oversized. Scoutify will also show us what type of prep we have to do, which is polybagging. And then if we come down here, list price is $39.99, net profit $19.93. So if we put in our cost, $16.99, we could see that we would earn a net profit of $1.81 after tax, and our return on investment would be 10%. That's not good enough for my standards. Obviously, we could have looked up here to that target cost per unit and seen that our $17 cost is a lot more than that $9.36. So let's keep reading down the listing to see what other indicators we have on this page. There are a couple of different offers on the item, 33 to be exact. The new price is $39.99 for someone who's shipping it themselves. All of the FBA offers are over here, and we can see that they're all new because they have ends next to them. If we go back to that frozen toy, we would see that new and used would be broken up for someone who is shipping it themselves, but with FBA, you have all of these that are new, and then this one has a G because it's in good condition. Going back to the backpack, you can click here for profitability, and it will break down all of your expenses for you. Amazon referral fee, fulfillment fee, closing fee, shipping, monthly storage. And so if we put in our cost there, now we can add that 17 in, it'll add in our sales tax of 110, and now we can see that our net profit's only $1.81. Next, we can go to history, and this will show us if we've ever purchased this before and if we've ever sold it before. So not only can you see how many you have on hand, but you can also see I've never sold this ASIN before and I've never purchased this ASIN before. And then storage right here is going to show you the storage fees and how that would break down your profit. If we sold it in 1 month, we'd actually make $250 instead of just the $184. But if it was December and we waited these 6 months, we'd start losing money because of the monthly storage fee. Still not satisfied, let's check our last item, which is this yoga mat. So we see all the same information. It's the correct item, $9.99. Our net profit would be $5.91, and our ROI would be 55%. We can see that there's 3 total offers, one of them for $31.99, FBA offers for $33.98. If Amazon was on the listing, there would be a little Amazon sign over here showing that they're on the listing, but they're not. Next, if we hit research, we can see that we can look at the Amazon listing here, and it'll just pull it up, especially if you're questioning whether an item is the same item, because sometimes pictures can be a little misleading. You could also see the number of reviews, which will give you an indication of how much it's sold. Camel is something that I use if there's no price here, because it'll estimate the price for you. You can also search for an item on eBay, or just search for it on Google and check your Amazon restrictions. But instead of clicking that, if you just click here, it'll show you what conditions you're able to sell an item in. So as we can see, I'm able to sell this new, use like new, everything except for refurbished. If we go back to that Nike item, even if it was super profitable, I still wouldn't be able to sell in any of the conditions, so that wouldn't even matter. Looks like none of these are going to be buys for today. This would be the closest. Let's get back home and actually start using Scoutify 2 to process the inventory that we've already purchased. The next step in the process is to create buy lists, which is the reason that I have everything organized by store. All of this being from TJ Maxx. Two options to make a buy list on Scoutify too. The first one is to click into this shopping cart icon right here, and then as you're gonna see, it'll pull up nothing. That's because we haven't made a buy list yet. So if we click the plus, we'll be able to create a new buy list. We could do that, but what I end up doing more often than not is having no buy lists there. And if you don't have any buy lists here, you can go ahead and just scan your first item. And then from the item screen, if you just hit add, it'll automatically prompt you to create a new buy list because you don't have any active buy lists yet. Now on this page, we have a lot of sections. The first thing that we're gonna put in is the price. Then we're gonna put in our quantity. We have 1, 2, 3. So we're gonna change that. For our list price, we're gonna keep it. We can change that with our repricer down the road. Purchase date, I just leave it as whatever date that I'm processing it. Next, we're gonna change the supplier from Academy to TJ Maxx and keep the condition as new. But if you had something that was used like new or a different condition, you could change it there. Our sales tax rate is 6.5%. If we had an automatic discount like I showed you before in Burlington, that would already have that number. The buy list is gonna be TJ Maxx because I can't spell. You can add any notes that you want to add. I don't have any notes that I want to add, so we're going to add this to the buy list. That's going to create our buy list over here. We have 3. Item cost is $11.70 because that includes tax, and then the total item cost down here. I wouldn't recommend taking the stickers off of these just yet, but we're gonna set them aside and do that same thing for the rest of these items. Now there is one important thing to note with this. I don't have any items today that are used or any different condition than new, so I don't have to worry about it. But let's just say I was to add another one of these to the buy list. If instead of adding it as new, I changed that to used like new and just add one. When I go to add something else, it's gonna automatically default to used like new. And if you're not really paying attention, like I'm not always super paying attention while I'm doing this because I'm listening to a podcast or something, that will just stay used like new, and you can run through a couple more inventory items and you'll have to go back and change it. And now since we're done cataloging all of our items here, you're gonna hit this little arrow down here and it's gonna pull this up. You could send an email to yourself, and then you're gonna wanna hit archive. Now you can keep the buy list open, but I always archive it because then when we go back and source a new item, we can just hit this add button, it'll prompt us to create another buy list, and that's 1 or 2 less clicks that we have to make. Now that we have everything laid out for the next store, we're gonna go ahead and add all of our items here. We're gonna start off by doing the exact same thing, scanning one of the items, hitting the add button, creating a new buy list. Sometimes I'll put the date in, so I'll put June 1 because it's the first shipment in June. I'm gonna put in our cost, 7 of them. Then what's really important to not forget to do is change the supplier from whatever supplier you were last on. This is just important for your accounting or your tracking of your progress, and you can go back and change it later, but it's really tedious to find all the items. So the first item that you do, make sure that you change your supplier. Now I'm gonna finish up processing all of this inventory from Walmart as well as from Burlington, Marshalls, and Academy, and then I'll meet you on the computers to figure out the next part. Here we're gonna start off by downloading our buy lists and importing them into InventoryLab. So we'll head over to my Gmail account, and if you look on the left side here, we have all of my tabs that I keep to make sure my business stays organized. So if we go down here to InventoryLab or just the buy list, I have all my buy lists sent directly into this label. Hit the download button on all of our buy lists. Next step is to go into InventoryLab and log in there. It's gonna pull up your dashboard. You go up here to the top to list and prep, and then we're gonna create a new batch. It's called a batch and not a shipment because Amazon will more than likely split up all of your inventory amongst a couple of shipments. But you can put it all into InventoryLab together and it'll do that work for you on the back end. So when you hit new batch, it's gonna pull up this pop-up window. And this pop-up window is gonna allow you to create a batch name. This is gonna be June 1 for me because it's the first shipment that I'm sending in June. And then we'll search for our file to create our buy list. So we'll pull up our downloads folder and just start with the first shipment. We'll start with Walmart. So it looks like there's actually recently been an update and I can import active buy list. So after we've selected our buy list, either by adding it from Scoutify 2 or just from our email, it's gonna show our ship from address. If you ship from multiple locations or you have someone else sending in a shipment, you can change that. And then it'll show the packaging type. This is gonna be individual products for me. You would change this in your settings if you do case pack shipments, but most resellers like you and me are gonna be doing individual products. Channel is gonna be FBA. You would do seller fulfilled if you ship it all out yourself. Workflow type private. I honestly don't know what that means. Labeling preferences. I will label all my items. You could also have FBA label them, but I think they charge 30 to 50 cents per label to do that, and labels cost less than a cent. Provide box contents is on because we're going to be able to input what goes into each box, and InventoryLab can tell Amazon that once we get to that step. Minimum maximum preferences do not capture. Send to Amazon or save to InventoryLab. You can set minimum maximum preferences. I don't know of a way to do that in Scoutify 2, and if anyone does, let me know. I have a third-party repricer, which I think is a little bit easier to use, so don't worry about that. Shipping method is going to be SPD or LTL. Small parcel delivery is when you just take it over to UPS. LTL is when you have pallets of stuff, and a truck is going to come to you. So now that we have that first buy list, list, we're gonna hit process by list. This second page you don't have to worry about if you use Scoutify 2. If you created your own spreadsheet with all of your inventory like a crazy person, you can go ahead and tell InventoryLab what each column is gonna correspond to, but it's all gonna match up since we use Scoutify 2. There are 3 steps to the validation process to actually get your batch started. First is InventoryLab validation, then Amazon validation, and then it's gonna create your batch. InventoryLab validation is there because they're creating SKUs for you, which are your stock keeping unit numbers. So for instance, we see this item, I already have some at Amazon, and so I'm just replenishing it. So even though it says it's an issue down here, it's actually not that big of a deal. Removed SKUs will happen if Amazon says you can't actually send something. But we'll go to replenish, and then I'm just gonna keep the same SKU number and we're gonna replenish it. And now we have no issues or remove SKUs. So we'll go to Amazon validation. This is gonna send all the information over to Amazon just to double check to make sure that you didn't miss if you were restricted in anything or gated. Since there was no problem with Amazon, we created our batch, and now we can see what it looks like in InventoryLab when you have an open batch. It's gonna show all of your items here on the side. Then on the bottom here, you'll have the total number of SKUs or different types of items. We have 29 total items. Our average sales rank is 206,000. The total sales value is $229. Total buy cost, so what I spent, is $57.65. The total net profit, so essentially sales value minus Amazon fees minus my buy cost, is $52.69. So we see that's a return on investment of just about 90%, which is pretty good, especially because a lot of this is replenishing my inventory that I know will sell for sure. Now, some people don't create buy lists in Scoutify 2 for a variety of reasons. One of the main ones is because they have a scanner that they connect to their computer. And so if you've maybe forgotten an item, like I have an extra headphone over here that I bought before at a Ross, you can go ahead up to this search bar and just search out the UPC or scan it if you have a scanner. And then from there you can select it, replenish your inventory if you already have it, or just create a new SKU, give the quantity, the average cost per unit, the date purchased, the supplier, everything that you would be giving on the app, put your list price as well, and it'll give you a net profit and a return on investment right here, as well as showing you all of the offers, just like in Scoutify 2. This is just the desktop version. So you'll just add that to the batch, and it'll be done. So after you write down the buy cost and profit to put at the end of your video, you go ahead and do it with all the rest of the stores that you've sourced inventory from, and try not to forget to add all the items that you forgot to put in your shipments for the past 2 times. So I'm just finishing up. I have one more buy list to add, and I realized I forgot to show you how to add more buy lists after you've already created a batch. If you hit these little 3 menu buttons over here, you can either edit the name of your shipment, print all the labels for your shipment if you have a thermal printer, which I'll talk about in a second, or import your buy list. And then you select the file. Academy is the last one that we have, so open it up, and I also have a couple things that I need to show you in this Academy buy list. So you see now we don't only have one thing to replenish, we have a bunch of them. So if we go ahead and hit bulk replenish all, this is going to handle a lot of that. Now we only have 42 issues. Now these issues though are duplicates. A lot of these are because when I'm at Academy, if I bought the same thing on clearance from 2 different stores, even if it has the same price, a lot of times I'll end up adding it 2 times just to add the correct amount of inventory from each receipt. So now we're going to merge all of these duplicates. All right, now we have no issues and 61 SKUs. Go to Amazon validation. And so luckily I've had no issues today or removed SKUs after I've sent everything over to Amazon. I always get a little bit of butterflies in my stomach every single time that I send everything off to Amazon, because Amazon can be weird sometimes and I don't know if something is wrong. Next step, add to batch. I'm going to add everything that I forgot, and then we're actually going to create the shipments so that we can start to label all of our own inventory. Now that we have everything in, we're going to hit review batch down here. This next screen pops up and it's basically just a summary page. Then we'll hit submit here and it'll pull up this pop-up. This will send the product feeds into Amazon, which will create the SKUs with Amazon. So if you don't actually want to create the shipment now, you can uncheck this request proposed FBA shipments button, but we want to actually get the shipments because we want to work on them in InventoryLab, so you can hit sync here. It's going to take a few minutes because InventoryLab is going to send all that information over to Amazon. And so now we can see that there are 3 shipments that it proposed. We have one going to Charlotte with 630, one going to Memphis it looks like with 3, and one going to Phoenix with 20 units. The great thing is the more inventory you have, the less amount of shipments normally you'll get. The reason we have the shipment with 3 is those yoga mats are considered small oversized, and all oversized units have to go together for whatever reason, so that's no problem. But then we have this one going to Phoenix because they needed to split it up just a little bit, I guess, and then the 631 unit shipment is sending the bulk of our inventory into one fulfillment center, and then from there it's going to be sent to other fulfillment centers. So the good thing is the more units you send in, the fewer shipments, which means you'll pay less, but it'll take a little bit longer for your inventory to become active because your final fulfillment center isn't usually the one that it gets initially sent to. There have been times when I've declined shipments and gone back and come back and had fewer shipments, same shipments. So we're just going to create the shipments here, hit create. Yes, create. I wish there was a way to just accept all the shipments. And then from here, we're going to click enter box contents. Now this is when I would recommend to start delabeling all of your items. I wouldn't before this point, just because at this point, you know, Amazon is expecting you to send in the unit. All the way up until this point, there's the potential for something to go wrong, especially when you're adding inventory inventory, so I never take stickers off before I at least get Amazon validation that it's cool for me to send in the units. There are essentially two ways to label items. I have a laser printer, so I just use these Avery 30 up label sheets. If you have a thermal printer like a Rollo or a Dymo, which a lot of people are suggesting I get, you can go to settings here, printing, and you can actually set up a printer to immediately print out labels every time that you add an item into your batch. So as we were adding all those buy lists into the batch, it would have just printed off all the labels for us and the labels would already be ready. If you're like me and haven't seen the need to invest in one of those printers, you're gonna from this point go over to Seller Central and then head over to Inventory, Manage FBA Shipments, and then you're gonna see that because InventoryLab is communicating with Amazon, you have all three of your shipments here. We're gonna click Work on Shipments. I do the smaller shipments first because it's easier to account for that inventory and because the longer ones take forever and it's nice to feel like I have a win. Then from here, you're gonna go to Review and Modify Units, scroll all the way down to Print Labels for this page. It's gonna download a product sheet. You open that up and print it out, and that's how you get your labels. So now that we have the labels, we're gonna start sending in the shipment over to Amazon. I have other videos talking about sending in shipments to Amazon, as well as everything that I use to send that in. But essentially, we're gonna delabel everything with a heat gun, a Scotty peeler, and some Goo Gone. Then we're gonna put on this label and pack it up with some Home Depot boxes and Duck HD clear tape. And if anything is fragile or liquid, we're gonna throw some poly bags around it. But remember, we have to tell Amazon everything that goes into each of the boxes. InventoryLab can help with that too. When it comes to smaller shipments, a lot of times you'll just be able to put everything in one box. So I'll label it up, put it in the box, and then come back over here into InventoryLab. And now that we're working in the shipment that has 20 items to go into Phoenix, you can just click this box, which will select all of your items, assign it to a box, and that's it. You'll be done with this shit. At this point, you can hit transmit boxes if you'd like, and then you can put in the weight and dimensions, but I do that all together for all of my shipments. Now for bigger shipments, just like every shipment, you have to specify everything that you're putting in each box. And I know it might seem a little tedious, but the best way I found to do this is to actually go through while I'm putting everything into boxes and have my computer with me so that I can click on specific items and put them into the boxes. So let's just click on these first couple items here. You can assign them to a box. Right now we only have the one box, so we've assigned them now to box 1. But say box 1 was full. You'll come here to new boxes and click how many boxes you like to create. I create them one at a time. Now we have 2 boxes, and let's say we wanted to put one of these hooks into box 1 and one of them into box 2. Instead of clicking onto this check mark and hitting assign to box, which would put all of them into one box, you go ahead to assign, and you can assign a quantity. So we'll put 1 in box 2 and we'll put 1 in box 1. If you have just created a box, don't forget to choose the next box because box 1 is defaulted. So if you click box 2, now we can start assigning stuff to the new box. So I'm gonna finish delabeling everything, labeling it back up, and putting it all into the correct box, and then we'll come back to InventoryLab for the next step. So now that we have all of our inventory accounted for and boxed up, we can actually head back into InventoryLab. If you log out of it or leave it when you have an open batch, when you just go back to list and prep, everything will pull up exactly where you were. As you can see, all of our inventory has been accounted for. All of this side is green, not blue, meaning that it's been assigned to a box. And we see transmit boxes over here for all of them. You can't hit each of these individually, but since we have all the shipments done, we can just hit transmit all boxes to Seller Central. Now we have to put in the weight and dimensions of the boxes. If you had boxes that were the same size, you could just put in a universal weight and it would add it to both of the boxes in your shipment, but we don't have it that way. And that's one of the reasons it's so important to put a Sharpie that has not only the box number on it, as well as the weight and dimensions for each shipment. Now we hit submit all. InventoryLab has sent our information over to Amazon, but now InventoryLab gives us this page, which is our closed batches. If you want to go back into it and change something, you can go into list closed batches, open a batch, you can restore it, which would reactivate the batch for you. Or if you just want to come in and look at the summary or everything that's in one of the batches, that's how you do it, list closed batches. So as we can see down here in the corner, our box content information has been accepted by full on Amazon, so we just go over to Seller Central, Inventory, Manage FBA Shipment, and we hit one of the shipments. This one is the one that is the 3 yoga mats. We scroll down past Review and Modify Units, and we see that our box weight and dimensions are already in there. We just have to calculate the shipping cost, accept the charges, give them the date that we're going to be printing, which is today, and then print out our labels. I would keep the page that opens up to print your labels open just in case you need to reprint something, but then come down here back into the Amazon page and hit complete shipment. And now when we go back into Manage FBA Shipments, you see that this one is ready to ship rather than working. So now I'm going to do the same thing with both of the other shipments, and we'll print labels for the other 2 boxes, stick them onto our boxes, take them to UPS to get them shipped out, and then come home and wait to collect our profit. But that's not all the InventoryLab can do for you. So let's go through each of these tabs here at the top to go through just basically what they are and some of the hidden features in InventoryLab. If you have InventoryLab already and you're anything like me, you probably got it just so you can send shipments into Amazon a little bit easier. And until you make a video figuring out what actually goes into InventoryLab, you're not going to know a lot of the cool features. So if you start up here in the upper right hand corner and click your name, go to my account, you'll be able to pull up some of that information. That'll pull up your billing information, and then you can go through all of your settings. Your general settings will have where you're going to be taken to when you log in. Customize all of these other settings if you want to look into them. They're pretty self-explanatory. Printing, you're going to be able to set up a thermal printer if you have one. You'll tell them when you want to start your labels, whether adding something to a batch or creating your listings. Your calculations are going to be the same things that you would have on Scoutify too. Moving from right to left across the screen, we have the support screen, which you'd really only click if you needed someone to talk to from InventoryLab. Resources is pretty cool, especially if you're getting started and want to really dive into InventoryLab and how to use it to the best of its possibilities. Under getting started, that's just how you'll make sure that you've linked your Seller Central account, and it'll show you how to do that when you get set up. The Help Center has some tutorials where you can ask a question and open a ticket. Then you can manage your cases from this tab as well. Look at any webinars that InventoryLab might have, because they do those periodically and they can be helpful if you need to learn more about the program. And the community forum is just what it sounds like. The reports tab is where you're actually going to start getting into some useful information. The reports that I look at are the supplier profitability, category profitability, inventory valuation, removals and disposals. The supplier profitability report will break down who the supplier is, how many units you sold in a given time period. It defaults to 1 month. The revenues, percentage of your overall revenue, profit, and then your return on investment. And then it'll also show you how many you have on hand from that time period. You can change this by going to the advanced search, looking at the last 3 months, 6 months, or all time. You can also see down here at this bar the total units sold, refunded, revenue, profit, and amount that you have on hand. Category profitability is similar, except it goes into the categories. So if you're wondering which categories in the stores to look at, you can come here and look at what your ROI was, and maybe look for more products that have a higher return on investment. So for me, pet products and speakers do really well for me, and I haven't really been looking at pet products as much as I maybe should, so I might want to go back and relook at more pet products because they're earning me on average 123%. Inventory valuation is going to show you the total amount of inventory that you have at Amazon. I really only look at the bottom here to see Amazon fulfilled. I have $4,400 worth of inventory at Amazon right now. $22 inbound. That just means stuff that hasn't been processed at the fulfillment centers yet. You're also going to see this over in the inventory tab under inventory FBA, where you'll see the total in-stock items, total SKUs, total in-stock buy cost, and the total in-stock sales value. Back at reports, we'll go to removals and disposals, and I found that this is easier to look at than the removal reports over on Amazon, because you have to go all the way over to the reports tab, find the removal reports, removal order detail. You have to look over a specific time period, let's say 90 days, generate the report, and it'll show you the order ID, the requested quantity, what's completed and canceled, but it won't show you what the actual units are. You have to click into each individual one. So in InventoryLab, you'll be able to see what each of the items are, whether they're pending or completed removal reports, and then the total fees associated with that. And then profit and loss is going to give you total net profit and expenses over a given time period. Right now it's showing June and it's only the beginning of the month, so I don't have a lot. But I also don't include my extra expenses outside of cost of goods here in InventoryLab because I do all of that via QuickBooks. Speaking of accounting, the accounting tab is going to give you a lot of information. Your FBA sales is actually a pretty important tab because it'll show you your average order price, average fees, and average profit per sale, which can help you figure out how much volume you might need in your business. It'll also show you all of the sales in a given time period. You have that for merchant sales as well, but I only do FBA. Refunds is also a little bit better than the Amazon refund side because it'll show you what refunds are coming in and then whether something has been returned to Amazon yet or not. Similarly, reimbursements show you what's been reimbursed to your account, all in one place. Other income is something you would use if you do extra accounting through InventoryLab, which I do not. Inbound shipping will show you your shipments and whether they've been shipped, closed, are receiving, or are currently working, like the ones that we just sent out. Mileage is something you can track in InventoryLab as well, but I do all that in QuickBooks. Other expenses, similarly, if you want to track other expenses. Then disposition management is also pretty cool. It just shows you whether something has been deemed sellable or unsellable when it's been returned to Amazon. Over in the inventory tab, it's pretty much all that we've already talked about. You have the total in-stock items, SKUs, buy cost, and sales value for FBA and merchant, which I don't have any, and unlisted inventory, which I don't have any either. Then under list, we pretty much went over this while we were creating the batches. You have list and prep, which is what we did to create our batches, close batches, where we can look at the batch that we just finished. You also have Amazon listing errors, but I don't have any. So maybe if you think that there's an error on your account at Amazon, this might have some information. And under research, this is where you can actually scout, especially if you're doing like online arbitrage and you want to look at something from online. You can just plug it into here. Let's use my camera that I'm using right now. It's $700. Average net profit would be $639. You can look at restrictions to see whether you can sell it or not. I cannot sell it in any conditions right now. And then in history, it'll show you everything that you've looked up using that research feature. And then probably the most important thing that most people will look at to track their numbers is going to be the dashboard. It's not the most important, but it's probably what you'll end up looking at the most. So if we look just over the first couple days of June, my total income has been $493.33. My total profit has been $103.83. So we can look at that $493 number and actually come over to this pie chart over here and look at the expenses. So far, FBA transaction fees have been $171 $71. Selling fees have been $74, and cost of goods sold have been $144. So if we just look at this time period, my cost of goods is $144, my profit is $103. So that means my return on investment is about 70%. You can also play with those numbers up here to see quarterly, yearly, weekly, or daily numbers. All the reports that you see, if you hit this little export button up here, you'll be able to export to either a CSV or an Excel file and be able to open it in a different program if you want to manipulate the numbers a little more. But since we're looking at profit here, let's go talk about potential profit as it comes to our last shipment so we can figure out who won that coffee. Here are the numbers to all of the stores, eBay, and Amazon from the last big reselling vlog. The closest comment to the overall profit was actually my wife, who guessed $3,100 when the total profit was $2,503.24. But she'll get a coffee regardless. Now I just owe it to her out of my business budget. So the closest who I don't live with was Jason Leva. His guess was $1,200 off, but he was also the only other comment, so he wins. Reach out to me in these comments over on Instagram or via my email, and I'll make sure to get you that coffee. But I'll also respond to your comment on the other video, which you can go and watch right here if you haven't seen it yet. If you want to know everything else that I use in my reselling business, watch that video right down here. But if you just want to get your money right, watch this playlist. Stay smart.